people are a threat to their movement and are coming to burn your house down. An armed person is harder to coerce than an unarmed person.
Hey, yeah, cold open.
That would be a cold open.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 3 of the Shoot, Shovel, and Shut Up podcast. I'm still Donovan, here today with my friend Oren.
And I'm still Oren.
He's been Oren for a while.
OT to some.
Yep. Yeah. What are we talking about today?
A lot. Or not a lot. It just depends on our energy. It's late.
Yeah, we're recording this at, I think, 9 p.m.
Which to some people sounds like lightweight numbers. But to working men, some with families, that's getting late.
Ever since I got married, which has been like a year and a week now. It'll be a year and a week on Sunday because I just had my anniversary.
Congratulations.
But marriage, I've learned, turns you old. And me and Elizabeth are normally both in bed snoozing by 9:30.
Really? That is old.
And it is so nice. And I try to wake up at 5:30. Normally it's closer to like 6 or 6:30. So I can get me like a healthy 9 hours a night.
Well, remember what we talked about in the last podcast, where the nation as a whole and the Western world, us with media, social media, are chronically underslept because we spend so much time on our phones, and because of electricity in general, we keep the lights on later. So, like, getting 9 hours of sleep a night, super healthy for you. You're probably not going to have dementia.
No, I hope not. I'm gonna try really hard not to. But yeah, I try it. I'm really bad at right before bed. I'll watch like a YouTube video, and then the first thing I do when I wake up is I have my phone set to where it'll turn on like just like a sleep setting, where like all my notifications are silenced, but it'll like do my alarms. But I won't see like any of my text messages, or if something like pops up on Instagram, like it won't notify me of anything. I have it set to do that until 7:30, which is when I leave for work, or maybe like 7:15. It's set from like, it'll be 10:30 at night to 7:15 in the morning. But I turn it off on my own, and then I lay in bed and scroll for like 10 minutes. I want to stop doing that, so I'm just going to not do that anymore.
Well, again, call back to our previous episodes. You have, I think, in both podcasts talked about the value of reading, and so maybe you could take that time and read a book with a little nightlight before going to bed instead of scrolling.
Yeah.
I have not. I'm going to be completely honest with you, Donovan. That book that we're supposed to be reading for, Wednesday mornings, I don't think I've touched it since November.
Gospel treason?
Yeah, gospel treason. I'm committing group treason. I haven't read it since the second chapter.
Can I be honest with you, Oren?
I would have it no other way.
We know you haven't read it since November.
Okay.
It shows.
Every time I show up?
Every time you show up.
Or don't?
Or don't.
Well, see, here's the thing. I don't much like the book.
What? Okay. Let's give me 30 seconds, and then we're going to talk about what we actually want to talk about. Tell me what you don't like about gospel treason. Other than, does it make you feel bad?
No, it doesn't make me feel bad.
Because it makes me feel bad. It makes me want to be a better man and a better Christian.
Well, that's good, because I think that's the point of the book. And there have been parts of the book where I've gone, hey, that's a really good point. But I think my overall takeaway from the book, just like as it has been written, I find it to be, I don't know, I think it's written sometimes oversimplified, or just like, I don't want to say dry, because it's not dry. There are theology books that are really dry and heady. I feel like this is the opposite of that. I feel like it's dry and then shallow.
Some parts, yeah. I'll agree with you there.
Like where I'm like, this could have been said a lot quicker, or I wish he would have dove into this point a lot more. I don't know. I'm not an author. I've never written a book, so I don't want to be too critical, but it's just like, I've read other theology-esque books, Christian living books, that have really engaged me a lot more than this one has. And I'd like, the last thing I want to do when I meet with you guys on Wednesday mornings is talk about this book.
Yeah.
And it's not because it's challenging me really hard. Like, there are some spots that like when it does challenge me, that's when I'm enjoying, like, I want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Is because I feel like then there's something to engage on. But a lot of times I'm just reading the pages and I'm like, I feel like we're just skipping over the good stuff and maybe going deep in like something that's kind of, it didn't need to go deep into. I don't know. But again, I haven't read that much of it, so maybe I need to give it more of a chance and keep reading it.
I would at least read it because you have to.
See, maybe that's also part of it. I don't like people telling me I have to read books.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
why I didn't do well in college.
what you sign up for? Anyway, um, I want to talk about my experience that I had on Friday.
Wait, before we jump into that, do you have a random fact for the week?
Random fact for the
Because
week.
we got to open with that one.
I don't. Do you?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, you do. I will just won't have one this week. Maybe I'll think of
Okay.
one while you say yours.
I hope so.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. So my random fact of the week is: did you know that during World War II, my favorite historical topic, the United States employed, well, not just the United States, every nation began employing bomber formations, strategic bombing on a mass level for the first time in human history?
Mm-mm.
It was the very first time. I mean, you could argue that the First World War involved strategic bombing, but it was so limited and didn't have a lot of effect that I don't count it. But then airplane technology made such a leap forward in the interwar period between World War I and World War II that now the options of killing people using flying machines grew exponentially.
Mm.
Like if the Wright brothers, I'm not sure when they passed away, and that's my failing as a historian, but if the Wright brothers saw what was accomplished with airplanes in World War II, I think their minds would have been blown because their little thing that they built that they flew in Kitty Hawk was basically a kite with an engine strapped to it, and it
Yeah.
flew hundreds of yards. And now you've got bombers with 4 engines flying at 45,000 feet and going 2,000 miles. That's crazy. Anyway, my fact of the day is that this allowed for an entire new theater of war, which, when I say a theater of war, it's an area in which a war is fought. So in World War II, you had two main theaters. You had the European theater. Actually, you had three. You had the Western European theater, you had the Eastern European theater, and then you had the Pacific theater. Why they call it a theater, I don't really know, but they do. But this involved a fourth theater, and it was the theater of the air war. And I remember I read a book called Masters of the Air, and they called it the theater 3 miles above Earth.
Hmm.
Is where this war was fought. And what was crazy to me when I read this is that the Marine Corps, the United States Marine Corps, was the branch of the military that fought in the Pacific primarily. There were some Army units there, but by and large, the Navy and the United States Marine Corps was the America's fighting arm in the Pacific. It was the Army and the Air Force. Well, the Air Force didn't exist yet. It was the Army Air Corps, but I won't get into that. That were doing the bombing raids in Europe, right? They're flying from bases in England, and they were flying across the English Channel, and they were bombing cities in Germany, right? This is what was so mind-blowing to me when I read up on this. There was an entire war being fought in the Pacific with the Marines, right? They're on the ground, they're getting shot at, they're getting artillery shelled, they're getting blown up with grenades, all this crazy stuff. There is a real war being fought with dozens of battles, thousands of lives lost in the 3 years that the Marine Corps was in the Pacific. This is what's crazy to me. In airplanes, above France and above Germany and above Belgium, in the 8th Air Force, well, not just in the 8th Air Force. Yeah, in the 8th Air Force alone, which was a bomber flight, right? They're all B-17 bombers. More men died flying B-17 bombers than the entire Marine Corps lost in the Pacific fighting a ground war. It was some 48,000 men perished flying bombers over Germany in World War II.
That's crazy.
Isn't that crazy? Like, because you think about air wars, and it's usually something that can be violent. You have the possibility of ending in a fiery death, falling to earth, right? But you don't because it doesn't involve as many people in the air, so you just don't think of the losses on that scale. But they were losing so many bombers, and they were sending so many bombers, so there was lots to be lost. That by the end of the war, they lost some 48,000 flyers. and it was more than the entire Marine Corps waging a ground war in the Pacific.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy to me. Thousands of Marines getting killed. One air wing, the 8th Air Force, lost more people.
And like right now in the Air Force, don't we have like less than 200 F-15s or something?
It's F-22s.
F-22s.
We made like 124 of them.
Yeah.
It was like Obama actually canceled the order of them. It's the greatest plane ever made, according to my understanding of it.
Yeah.
And yeah, but to be fair, it's kind of like trying to find allocation of resources because those things are so expensive to make. But again, it's like back then. Now, if we tried to do the same strategic level bombing, it wouldn't be possible because they'd all get knocked out of the sky by anti-air defenses. Yeah. That technology didn't exist then, so we were able to use strategic bombing. But this is another thing that's crazy. It's a little extra little tidbit for the listeners, and I promise the history nerd stuff is about to end, so hang in there if you're not into this. But this was crazy. Before the war started, strategic bombing on the level that was achieved during the war was impossible technologically. It was achieved during the war and utilized throughout the war. And then by the end of the war, it was out of date. It could no longer be used because of technology. That's how fast technology was developed during the war.
Yeah, and right now it seems like in wars, at least everything's either like technology based or it's just kind of under the radar. Mm-hmm. It's like stuff happens in secret without the other side knowing.
We've become so good at killing each other.
Yeah.
But then you look at something like, if you believe, there's people out there that don't. If you believe what's going on in Ukraine right now, that has devolved into a very conventional conflict. You've got troops on the ground. The tanks are getting knocked out. It's like we have come to think, because of the war on terror, that war has devolved into just drone striking people.
Yeah.
But it's like, man, when you start dealing with countries without the United States resources, warfare can devolve into a really conventional,
very gruesome,
yeah. It's just like, man, there's people fighting in trenches, in Ukraine. It's like we thought that trench warfare was over after World War I, and here we are, people digging in, making trenches. It's just like there's some things that don't change about war, and there's a lot that does. Don't get me wrong, warfare changes. But all right, history moment over, and Donnie will bring a fun fact next week.
Oh yeah, I will think of one for next week.
It can be literally anything.
Okay.
Hey, and if you guys want to share your fun facts, listeners, go ahead and write them to us. We've got a YouTube channel now. It's called
Shoot, Shovel, and Shut Up.
You can speak because you don't have a mic.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. I was staring down our wonderful producer.
I thought you were
the
doing
odd
that
nun.
For dramatic effect.
No. I couldn't remember. I wasn't sure if it was just Shoot, Shovel, and Shut Up. So, if you guys want to watch these episodes, they are on YouTube. And Donevan and I sometimes look dapper.
Yeah.
I don't look as dapper as Donnie did.
I had a black shirt with 3 buttons on it last
He
week.
looked good last episode. He had a beautiful smile, too, for our still shot. There we go. We just
Still do. Still got it.
Yeah, you do. Anyway, So that's my interesting fact for the week.
Very cool. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
So I had a new experience on Friday where for the first time in, my entire life, but more specifically in my time concealed carrying a firearm, that I thought I was actually going to have to use it.
Really?
Yeah. And I just want to talk a little bit about, what was going on through my head in the moment, because like until then, I've always wondered like what would I actually think in a moment where, I feel in danger, somebody else has a gun, I think I'm going to have to pull my gun.
For sure.
Like would I be calm? Would I be freaking out? Would I know what to look for and what not to look for? Which luckily in this situation, like the police were there and they were able to defuse the situation before any of us had to.
Yeah.
But basically it involved, I was at a buddy's house. A few of us were there hanging out, and there was a belligerent drunk neighbor that we had to call the police on. He, I guess, put it all together that we were the ones that called the police, and he drove down on a golf cart, cop car right behind him, and he's drunk and yelling at us and everything. And the next thing we know, he's got a shotgun out,
Really?
and we're taking cover.
Yeah.
But it was about just 3 minutes of yelling before this. We'd already heard him shoot off gunshots, and so we kind of figured like, all right, this guy's probably armed right now, even if we don't see anything.
Yeah.
And I remember in the moment, the first thing I thought was I was thinking about my clothes because I was wearing this hoodie where if you're watching on the YouTube, you can see the hoodie I'm wearing. And I also had a zip up. And so one of the main principles of concealed carrying and having like a quick draw like to your gun is like one to the gun, like one
Yep.
layer of clothing.
You don't want to have to phone book your way to the gun.
No, not at all. That was the first thing that was going through my mind, as well as do I have a round chambered? And these were two questions
You
I
had
was
to ask
asking
that
myself.
to yourself?
No, I knew there was a round chamber, but
Okay,
I'm like,
okay.
what if? And so it's like this whole experience has like changed how I'm dressing,
Yeah.
how I carry. There was a, well, yeah, I don't need to get into that, but yeah, I was thinking of like, all right, I don't have one layer to the gun right now. That was the first mistake I had made, and so I'm trying to think about like, all right, if I have to go, then like I'll have to get 2 garments out of the way and everything, and it's like even then, is there one in the chamber? I'm gonna have to rack it when I come out, and then I'm like thinking through all these things that could slow me down. Thinking through all this while also realizing like just keeping my eyes on this guy and knowing that all right, if I see a gun and feel that I'm in danger, I have every right to pull my gun out and shoot him. And so like in the moment, I wasn't panicked at all or freaking out like, oh, I hope he doesn't do this. I hope he doesn't do this. It was just like, all right, I am confident in my abilities, knowing that I have trained enough and am prepared enough to where if he does something, I know exactly what to look for to know that I'm well within my rights to pull my gun and shoot him if I have to. All that to say, to anyone who concealed carries a pistol, consider these 3 things. What do you wear day to day? Does it allow you to get to your gun quickly? How do you carry your gun? Do you carry it where you're ready to shoot it at any moment's notice? Because honestly, I never thought I would be in a situation like this because I'm like, I'm probably going to do all this training and everything to be prepared, and I'm never going to get in a situation in my life where I may have to pull my gun. Right. This is the closest I've ever gotten, and I never thought this would happen. Like It was a crazy experience. And then do you know your laws well enough to know when you can and can't shoot a man?
Right. Those are important.
Yeah, they're very important. Which ended up, he pulled out a shotgun, and because the police were there, we just kind of took cover, and they pulled out their guns, and we're kind of just keeping it controlled and contained. I don't think he ever actually pointed it at anybody. I'm not real sure on just, I didn't really remember any of that stuff. So I luckily didn't have to, like draw on somebody, but definitely like all the thoughts were there. And
so you're pleased with yourself because the mental reps and the training have given you the headspace, one, to think about a situation like that. And so when it happened, it didn't take you completely off guard.
Right.
And then secondly, the physical training you've done gave you the confidence that if you had to act in a self-defense way, what you're saying is you weren't overwhelmed by the prospect of a very real prospect of potentially having to do that.
Yeah.
And you're worried, where it's just like, man, if this happens, I've heard it's overwhelming. You get this massive adrenaline dump. Am I going to be able to function? Like that's what you were worried about. And you're like, I kind of want to be tested in this way because I want to know that I have what it takes to be able to stand in the pocket and deliver when a threat presents itself.
Yeah, it was a perfect situation where it was like I felt like anything could happen at any moment where I could have to do something, and then luckily I didn't.
Yeah.
But it was enough of an experience to know, like, all right, I think this is how I would like react in this situation.
Yeah. Well, and to be clear to our audience, like Donovan is not saying, and I would never say also, that we want to be in a situation where we kill somebody.
No, not at all. I'm so glad I didn't have to draw my gun because I'm trying to think if I did have to, and I had to shoot the guy, like that's something I would carry the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Like I would never go a day without thinking about that. And like I didn't have to pull a gun in this situation, and I've still thought about it every day, just replaying it and replaying it.
Yeah.
Like I very well could have had to. Luckily, the police were there. Honestly, I think if the police were there, who knows what would have happened.
Yeah. I mean, and to be fair, I wasn't there, so I can't say. But who knows if the guy actually had malintent? He probably was like you said, he was drunk. So, and he was mad.
He was drunk and angry and whipped a golf cart right down that road.
Right, but it's just like a guy like that. Like if I can, this is gonna sound bad. Please, listeners, dear listeners, take this in the heart in which it is offered. If I'm ever in a shooting, I don't want to get into a shootout. I don't want to have to shoot. I don't want to have to put holes in the person who's like drunk and belligerent and probably would regret their words the next day.
Yeah.
Like if I get into a shootout, I want it to be with somebody who's like being malicious. Like I don't want to shoot somebody who's being an idiot. I would rather get into a gunfight with somebody who's being intentionally like they want to cause harm to somebody.
Right.
And again, I wasn't there, so I can't speak as directly to this guy's heart. But I imagine he's more one of those persons who's kind of bitter at life, and looking maybe for like a fight, but he doesn't want to actually hurt somebody.
Yeah, and that's where
mean?
I don't.
But you couldn't know that in the situation, so
No.
you wanted to be ready.
This was my first interaction ever with this person,
Mhm.
and so I only know them in their drunken, angry state.
Right.
And so like I don't know his character as a sober man at all. I just know this person probably made the decision to be drunk.
Yeah.
And probably also knows how he gets when he's drunk.
Yep.
And in doing so, he's at fault for both of those things.
Sure. And I would never say that you wouldn't, like a person wouldn't be in their right to defend themselves against a belligerent drunk who, in their drunken stupor, decides to point and, God forbid, pull a trigger on somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if somebody gets shot because they're being drunk and stupid with a gun, that is their fault entirely.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that would be a really crappy situation to be in. Like, it would be harder to feel good about it because you're just like, man, this guy could have avoided it entirely if he was just better with his alcohol. Whether in comparison, it's like somebody like goes out, like somebody who's robbing a convenience store, like especially with a real gun. There are idiots out there who will rob a grocery store or a convenience store with a fake gun. Like we saw that happened recently where a guy was holding up a store with a fake gun, ended up getting killed for it because somebody was there ready to defend themselves, thought the gun was real, and shot the guy. If you're convincing people to give you your money, you'll give you their money because you've got a gun on them and you're convincing your fake gun is real, then you've also convinced them that the gun is real and so they can shoot you.
Yeah, and it's crazy the different laws in different places where, like, I forget where we're talking about it is, but like if you see somebody walking down the road and they're just like holding, like let's say they're holding like an AR or something and they're walking down a public sidewalk with their AR, if you feel in danger, you are within your rights to shoot them. They don't have to be on your property or anything. I wish I remembered where this is. I want to say it's like Texas or something, but I don't want to be wrong.
I haven't heard that rule. I know the opposite. So like in Minneapolis, you can get prosecuted for shooting somebody who breaks into your house.
Yeah.
If you have what their law says is if you have a route of escape, you are lawfully obligated to take the route of escape before defending your own property. Like it has to be a situation where they're like got a gun to your daughter's head or something before you can shoot them.
Yeah, apparently you can break into somebody's house without malicious intent.
Right.
Which I don't understand.
And so, which I can appreciate somebody trying to make the law of like somebody's life isn't worth your stuff, which I can appreciate from a Christian perspective of all life being sacred.
Mm-hmm.
And like I'm not going to shoot somebody for sticking me up for my wallet, but I will shoot somebody who pulls a weapon on me for my wallet because I don't know if they want my wallet and my life.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And especially if I'm with family. And like, let's say, I'm with family and somebody's out there ready and they come up to mug me. What's in my wallet doesn't really matter to me, and I do not want to kill somebody over it. But I'm going to defend. But if a weapon comes out, it's been plenty documented that just capitulating and saying, man, I don't want any trouble. Here's my wallet. There's been plenty of people caught on camera taking the wallet and then shooting the person they stole the wallet. Like it's crazy. People out there are crazy.
Get the money, shoot the witness.
Yeah. And so it's not about protecting the wallet. I do not want to shoot somebody over my wallet, and I would hate to be in a situation where somebody's got a weapon on me.
Yeah.
And their desire is my wallet, because I'm like, man, don't die over this, because I don't know if you're going to kill me afterwards or not. And you never know, because they could be hopped up on some kind of drug, and be in a brain-addled state and make a poor decision, or even just like freak out over something and pull the trigger. And accidentally kill me. I don't want to die, and I don't want my family to be put in danger, and I want to be in a situation where I am capable of defending myself. And that goes into kind of the firearm thing I want to talk about during this podcast, which is, man, I wish I had my notes. I'm going to look and see if I put it in my phone notes. Bear with me, dear listeners. Basically, it was this topic was inspired by a comedian who was talking about. Oh, okay, good. I can talk about the comedian while I'm looking for my notes, because I remember what he was talking about. He was making the joke that people who carry guns because they believe in the Second Amendment are dumb. Because, let's be honest, this is what he was saying. Anybody who carries a gun kitted out with it, he's like, okay, it made sense in 1776, he said, when everyone had the same technology. It was very easy for everybody. He was like, I agree with it 100%. The Second Amendment made 100% when it was penned in 1776, which the Constitution wasn't written in 1776, but I'll let him slide. Because it was easier to, basically his argument was, it was easier to overthrow the government in that time than it is now, because he said, man, that you know the guy that's got all of his Kevlar from head to toe, and he's got his AR-15. What's he going to do against a drone? Which is funny. That's the bit. Like his biggest point wasn't to make a political argument, but it was to make a joke, and that's kind of funny because it's true.
Oh yeah.
If you bring an AR-15 to a drone fight, you're gonna lose. However, I think he's missing. I think that's how people like take the gun argument at its face value. And they're like, yeah, all these people who are saying they're going to carry guns because they want to have the power to overthrow a corrupt government, they're stupid, because the corrupt government is more powerful than them, and they're going to beat you every time. All right, let me stop talking and actually look up my notes. And I think that's really short. Oh, here we go. Nope. That's last episode's notes. Oh, hey. Donnie, what are you drinking?
I'm drinking an Ale 8.
What is Ale 8?
It is a beverage from Kentucky. That is, some would compare it to like a ginger ale or a Sierra Mist. It tastes better, I think, than both of those. It's got a
Ale 8-1.
Ale 8-1. What is that? What that is?
Yeah, so it's a play on words, because it's
a late one.
A late one.
A late one.
Yeah.
Learned something new. Yeah, established in 1926. It's pretty good. It's a lot sweeter, I'd say, than like a ginger ale.
Yeah, it's got a lot of sugar and a lot of caffeine in it.
Yeah.
It was brewed for a competition and won first place, and then they just kept making it. And the nickname in Kentucky is Kentucky Swamp Water.
Yep.
I love that stuff.
Yep.
I'm drinking water because I already drank this can, but I wanted it to be on the podcast. I'm not going to tell you what it is. You're going to have to watch our YouTube video. But I rep it hard because I think it's the best energy drink on the planet. Donnie disagrees, but I genuinely like it.
It's pretty mid at best, I think.
This flavor is really good.
All right, actually, I'm going to pull back the curtain. I only bought it because it says Jocko on it.
Oh, frick you. We got to make him watch it.
No, I only bought it.
It's this flavor.
The video is going to be on the Spotify.
I only bought it because it says Jocko, and I thought it was okay. I got the coconut mango one, I think is what the flavor is. That is the only flavor I've tried. Maybe the green apple is better, or the sour apple, but honestly, I hate sour apple flavoring in anything. That's my.
I'm
sound.
drinking water out of it because water is the best energy drink.
Yeah, I agree.
But I think that this one's a winner, and it's a lot more healthy. At least it's advertised as being a lot more healthy. And I don't think Jocko would lie to me.
No, I only got it because Jocko told me to go get some.
He does say that.
Yeah.
Get some.
Go get some. Jocko,
Anyway,
out. Jocko, you should be on the podcast.
Hey, Jocko, if you ever want to come out here from California and have a show with two idiots who absolutely adore your work, we would have you in a heartbeat. We'd even pick you up from Atlanta.
It'd be really good for him too.
It'd be good for you, Jocko.
Yeah, you would reach a bunch of people who already listen to your podcast.
Bring as many of these crap energy drinks with you as you want.
I will drink them. Donnie will not, because he's not a shill.
Yeah.
I'm not, though, because I genuinely like the product.
No, I'll try out some other flavors,
All right.
Jocko.
All right. I've got an unopened sour apple.
Not tonight.
Yeah, that's smart. Okay, anyway, back to my point. So this guy's saying Second Amendment supporters are dumb because there's no way we could stand up to the United States military, right?
I agree.
And I would agree on its face. If American gun owners were to revolt and be pitted one-on-one or like group on group against the United States military, we would lose.
Yep.
90% of the time, 99% of the time. It would really have to be like and regardless, it would have to be a prolonged conflict like the Afghanistan conflict to win. And a lot of people would die.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people on the insurgent side would die. And so, but I think that misses the point, because what I think is great about firearm ownership, I was talking about this quite a lot this week, and it's what inspired me to bring it up on the podcast, is firearm ownership is more than like being prepared to rise up against the government. And I don't discount that. I think that is a valuable truth to gun ownership, is an armed population is harder to oppress than an unarmed population.
Mm-hmm.
But it's more than that. It's the fact that when you take gun ownership seriously, you are giving yourself more authority to deny the whims of others. Be it a mugger in the street or a mob of people that have decided you are a threat to their movement and are coming to burn your house down. An armed person is harder to coerce than an unarmed person. And the freedom to bear arms is the freedom to self-defense. When you take away the freedom to bear arms, you take away the freedom to decide how you want to live your life. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Mm-hmm. That is the point of our government system. And I firmly believe in that. I firmly believe that that still exists today in our country. Maybe some could argue, and maybe I would agree with them, that it's less than it was back in the day. But I also think that now a wider diversity of people now today are able to pursue the idea of life, liberty, and happiness than when our nation started. You think about Native Americans, you think about African Americans, anybody of color. It was difficult, if not impossible, for them to pursue the same freedoms as the white European colonists. Mm-hmm. However, not
to say that it isn't still difficult,
but I think it's wrong, and this gets into a completely different conversation, but I think it's wrong to say that we haven't made progress in that area, and that the United States is not the best place to live in if you want to pursue your own individual life. Mm-hmm. I think you have the best opportunity to do that here, no matter who you are. But as soon as you take away the ability to defend yourself and your beliefs, I saw another comedian. I love comedians because I think they really hit home on a lot of true things through humor, and the freedom to be a comedian. in today's world is really important. And if you silence comics, that is the first step to an authoritarian regime.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as you tell somebody that they can't make a joke about that, like there are lots of comedians that I think make off-color, poor taste jokes, and I'll just choose not to listen to them. But I'm not going to tell them they can't do it, right?
That's why I love Dave Chappelle.
Yeah,
Where Dave Chappelle gets on stage and he does like whatever he wants. He'll smoke a cigarette like in a no smoking like indoor venue or something just because he wants to. Which at some point you're kind of being like a jerk, and um, he could get close, but at the same time it's like you can have rules for what to do and not do in your club, like smoking a cigarette. But if you are paying money to go see a comedian, you need to be okay with whatever they're going to say.
right. Because they have the
It's
freedom
their
to do
show,
that.
not yours. You're the one that paid money to be here.
Yep. Anyway,
Yeah.
I agree 100%. And so this other comic was making the point that he said the first thing we wrote was people have a right to voice their opinion, no matter what it is. Freedom of speech. People can say it without fear of recourse, which today is not entirely true. You can get fired now. And it's not just people like to say that, oh, we're changing. It's always been the fact that if you say something that the company you're working for feels is damaging,
Mm-hmm.
people have always been fired for that. I think what we've seen today is just a shift in what has been considered to be improper or damaging to the company, right? Anyway, but he was saying the first thing we wrote was you have the freedom to say it. Then he said that the joke was the second thing we wrote, but you better get a gun. If you're gonna say whatever you want, you have to have a gun. But I think there's some truth to that, because it's like, if you want to be able to defend what you have to say, if somebody gets really mad and tries to kill you for it, you got to be ready to defend yourself and to defend that right to say what you want and to live how you want. Now, if the way you're living is impeding somebody else's pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness, the pursuit of happiness, then it's wrong, and that's why we have laws.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, this is a mindset of, I see firearms as a tool to defend the sanctity of life, and I believe that life is sacred, and it's sacred enough to fight for.
Mm-hmm.
Which seems oxymoronic. I think this is where a lot of pacifists get their ideology from, is because they're like, well, yes, life is sacred, and so I'm never going to put myself in a situation to use violence against others. I don't subscribe to that belief system, because I believe that if you are not willing to fight for what you believe in, then that belief system goes away. And as a Christian, I am willing to die for my faith because I believe that I have a God who's powerful enough to fight for me.
Mm-hmm.
That's not something I'm going to draw weapons over. And so somebody could call me a double-minded or a pacifist there. But I also believe that I have a right and I have a obligation to be capable of defending the people around me who I love, right, against assault and against tyranny.
I don't know if you do this, but I feel like every time I'm carrying, just wherever I'm at, if I'm around certain people, it's like whenever I'm carrying, I am assuming the responsibility of being in charge of the safety of anybody who's immediately around me should a situation arise. Is that something, do you like consciously like
No.
make that switch in your head? Which I guess I do that even whenever I'm not
Mm-hmm.
carrying, but it's like, all right, if something was to go down,
Mm-hmm.
I feel responsible to be the one to handle it.
Sure.
Just because I think I have confidence in my knowledge and in my abilities to be able to do something if I needed to do something.
Yeah. I think being in a position to and being capable and being prepared to defend people around you is definitely the mindset that self-defenders should have.
And it's not something I'm going to flaunt either. We're like, okay, guys,
Yeah.
if anything goes down,
We'll get to that.
I'm your guy.
That's something I do want to touch on.
It's like the whole point is to be very discreet, and it's like you don't need to flaunt if you're the one who, if you feel you're the one who, it's not even like knowing the most, and it's not a pride issue. I think with owning a gun and being responsible with it, there's a lot of humility that comes with it too.
It has to.
You have to have.
If you're not humble with carrying your gun, then don't carry your gun.
Yes, otherwise you're making everybody uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think people who are prideful with their gun carrying are people who open carry. But anyway, I want to finish my point before I want to answer your question.
That's a whole nother.
And I'm gonna get. Well, I want to get into that briefly after this. Is that I don't necessarily, when I put my gun on and I go out about my day, I don't. Yes, I say I do think about it in the perspective of now I am capable. I'm much more capable of defending. Like if I'm at work and for some disgruntled former employee or whatever shows up to my business and they're gonna start capping people, I'm like, I realize that now I'm in the place to best defend myself and the people around me. But I don't see it in the perspective of, okay, now I don the responsibility for people around me. Because I think that, like, okay, again, let's go back to what I said in our first podcast when we were talking about self-defense. If I'm like in Walmart someday in the future and I've got my wife with me and an active shooter starts shooting up the Walmart, I'm not going to seek out that gunman to defend the people around me.
Get your wife and get out of there.
I'm going to get down and get out because I feel like my responsibility is to defend my own life and to defend the life of my loved one.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
But let's say on the way out, I'm running down a hall and all of a sudden the gunman appears on the other end of the hall. That's when I'm going to draw my gun and attempt to defend my life and my wife's life.
Yeah.
But I'm if I'm there by myself, I'm not going to go out of my way to be a third party savior in that situation. And some people can disagree with me, but I don't believe that is the first. We're not called to be first responders in that situation. And it does make it also, you got to think about it this way, because of if you shoot somebody, no matter how justified it is, you're gonna go to jail for the night. You're gonna have your gun taken, and you're probably gonna be wrapped up in legal litigation for the next few years. And so I am not willing, because I have the responsibility to defend myself and defend my family. I've got to also take into account at what point do I need to cross the line from preservation to go on the offensive? Because is it going to be worth the subsequent stress financially and emotionally of what this is going to cost if I draw my weapon and go to work with it?
Yeah.
Right. And so I think, to answer your question, maybe we're saying the same thing, but I don't feel like in donning my gun I become a protector to strangers.
Yeah, and it's not like I wasn't ever saying like I feel like I'm gonna have to go out of my way if there's ever like an active shooter thing. I fully agree with you on that. Like I would, if this situation happened where it was the best decision to do that, then yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think it's something where if you train properly, you'll know exactly what to do in that moment. Well, that's where like, when that guy was at my friend's house while we were there, I never pulled my gun, even though that person had a gun, but also, the police were there.
Yeah.
And I could have been a savior and tried to do something stupid. But that's where you just got to know in the moment, like, what is the best decision for myself and the people around me. And if that decision is to get out, you'll know. I think if you train properly, you'll know. If that decision is to take out an active shooter, then take out the active shooter.
Yeah.
Or if it's to escort people out of the Walmart or something, then do that.
Yeah, and this is a good point. Dear listener, get medical training. Be familiar with using tourniquets and like, first level trauma care. Like for me, as somebody who's carrying a gun, I've been doing a lot of research on medical like first aid kits
Mm-hmm.
for gunshot wounds or for stab wounds. Be able to not just be there as a first responder to a gunfight, but be there as a medical first responder for people who have been shot. It might take a while for medical to get there. So like I have no issue with like if I have established that now it's safe for me to help save lives, I'm going to go out of my way to help that. I'm not. But if yeah, it's just tough. Like situations are so fluid in that regard. I want people who carry guns to have a really self-preservation mindset to the way that they hold themselves.
Yeah.
It's be really selfish with yourself and be really selfish. I guess can't really, but have a list of have circles of importance where it's like first you, and then it's your family around you, and then it's friends, and then it's strangers. And they and once you know that you're squared away, and I'm not saying like save your life before your family's. I'm saying a like list of importance. Where if you're not squared away, then you're not going to be in the best situation to then defend your family around you. So make sure you're squared away first. Then you can make sure your family's squared away. Then once you make sure your family's squared away, then you can make sure your friends are squared away. Make sure your friends are squared away. Then you can start going to helping the people around you. And I think work through that triage or that list of importance in your mind, so that if you're ever in one of those situations, you're not overwhelmed by it and you start making decisions outside of that list of precedence, or importance. What because if you have that mindset, then you're able to respond to anything that's a crisis. Natural disasters, car accidents. I was on the side of the road one time changing my tire. This is a crazy story. This is what actually I meant to tell this story on the last podcast. This was involved in my going down to the airport to fly up for my awesome Minnesota, Wisconsin Christmas.
It's a fun story.
I won't get too bogged down in the details, but basically I had a flat tire on the way down there. And so I hopped out of my car, I was changing my tire, and about the time I got the first lug nut loose on my tire. I'm on the side of the road. It's on I-75, go southbound, head to Georgia. Everybody and their mom is out on the road. People are flying by me at 70 miles an hour, and I'm just like, man, I got to get this tire changed because somebody could be not paying attention and just absolutely send me to Jesus in a blink of an eye. And then I get my one lug nut loose. I've got my back to the road, and I kid you not as far as from here to that wall. Maybe from here into the first bay where the lawnmower sits. I got my back to the road, and all of a sudden I hear this really loud squeal of tires. It's like, bam! And I turn around just in time to see this Tahoe absolutely demolish the rear end of this little sedan. It's so violent that when I turn around, I see the back end of this sedan completely lifted off the ground and disintegrate. Both the front end and the back end of this car just absolutely crumples. Parts are flying everywhere, and it launches the sedan down the road, and it eventually pulls over like 70 yards down the road from me. But this Tahoe like stops in its tracks, and then pulls. I can't remember if it pulls off the side of the road or if just the place that it ends up landing because of the accident, they get off the side of the road. But fortunately, the way that this accident transpires, both vehicles end on the Tahoe that does the hitting, bam, and is right across from me, is on the other side of the white line on the slow lane. And the car that got hit gets knocked into the other lane and eventually ends up on the other side of the white line on the left side of the road, the fast lane. And so I'm like, oh shoot, I got to make sure these people are okay. And so I pull out my flashlight, which, by the way, men especially who are listening to this podcast, but really this applies to anybody, carry a flashlight in your pocket. I do. It goes in my back pocket right next to my wallet. And this buddy right here is awesome. I use it every single day for anything. Like, it's tough. I drop something on the ground, it's in the shadow, and boom, I turn it on. But this turned into an invaluable tool while I was on the road because it was in the middle of the night. And so I'm not wearing any high vis stuff. I mean, I'm dressed very similarly to how I'm dressed now. I'm wearing a black shirt and a camouflage vest. That's going to be tough to see on the road. And so I use my light, I turn it on, and I start kind of just shining it up and down, not to blind drivers, but to point myself out.
Yeah.
And so I get people stopped, and then I go across the road, run across the road to the Tahoe, and all the airbags are deployed. The front end is about half the size it used to be. And there's smoke in the car and everything. I got like, man, I'm checking for fire. I'm checking for leaks. Fortunately, there's none of that. And I get them to unlock their door. I can't see the people inside because the airbags are all deployed.
Yeah.
But I get them to unlock the door, and I go to open the door, and it's so bent that the door can't open. And so I use my tire iron, which I had in my hand still. They've got a flathead end on the tire iron, and I wedge that into the door, crack the door open, get my body inside, and I'm able to kind of press the door open. And then I duck under the airbag, because there's airbags on the window sides as well. It's not just in the front. I duck under the airbag, and there's a lady probably in her 20s and a man in his 20s on the passenger side. And they are both just shook up because they just had airbags deploy right in their face. So they're probably concussed.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, hey, are you guys okay? Can you hear me? And like I get them to tell me their names. I get them to tell me where they're going. You know, I establish that they're not too jacked up. And about that time, I hear screaming from the other car way down the road. And I'm like, oh no, they could be really jacked up. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to call first responders. They're going to be coming. And I'm really careful because I don't know the state of these drivers. They could be drunk. They could be high. They could not want police to show up. So I don't reference police. I don't want them to get freaked out by me and start like, you know, this is super unlikely, but this is another thing, kind of like what you were talking about with the situation with the crazy guy with the shotgun. I'm like, I don't know this situation. I don't know the mindset of these drivers.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be there to help them, but I also don't want to put myself in danger. So I just say I've got first responders on the way. I never reference police. Just hang tight here. You're off the road. Stay in the car, and I'll be back. And I take off running. I use my flashlight again, my handy flashlight, to stop traffic. I run across the road and then down the road to this other lady who has just kind of opened her door and is sobbing. Like, she is hysterical. She's probably in her mid 40s. And she's just staring at her phone, which is all lit up. She had gotten it open, but then she was just staring at it with her finger hovering over the screen.
Just in shock.
Just in shock. She couldn't actually tap one of the contacts. And I was like, hey, what are you trying to do? She's like, I'm trying to call my son. And I was like, I got you. I took the phone from her, and I dialed her son. I got him on the phone. I explained that I was with his mom on the side of I-75. I was able to, if you don't know already, on highways, there are mile marker numbers. And that is a way for you to call any rescue vehicles and to give a really accurate description of where you're at on the highway. And so I was able to say, I'm on 575. I'm really close to the merge with I-75. I'm at mile marker 8. And so I tell her son that, and then I got off the phone with him. He's on his way, and I ask her if I can use her phone to dial 911. And so I get on 911, I get on the phone with them. They start asking me all kinds of questions. They're like, sir, are you all right? And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm fine. I was just changing my tire on the side of the road, and all of a sudden this happened. You know, she's like, okay, what's your name? What are you driving? And like a bunch of questions. And then she started asking me, what are the makes of the cars? At this point, I've walked away from the lady in her car. And so now I'm kind of in between the two cars in the accident. And then she asks me, this is what's crazy, and this is what I've kept in my mind since then. She asked me, what are the makes and models of the vehicles and colors of the vehicles in the accident? And I didn't know. I was so overwhelmed, sensory overload from everything that had just happened.
Mm-hmm.
No idea. I had no idea. Like, the car that had gotten crunched into, it could have been a truck. It could have been a Kia, whatever.
Yeah.
And so I actually had to run all the way back up to the first car to even see what color it was. And so then I was able to say, okay, it's a Tahoe and it's white. And I was able to run down to the other one, and it was a I don't remember this one as well. The Tahoe really stands up. It was a black car, and it was either a Lincoln or a Mercedes.
Oof.
It was a nice car.
And it was totaled.
Oh, yeah, it was absolutely. Both cars were destroyed. She was trying to get into the trunk. She asked me to get in the trunk so I could get to her medicine, and I was which I don't know how important the medicine was because she couldn't even tell me what it was. But I think it was just something she had fixated on. And I looked at the trunk and I was like, yeah, there's no way we're getting into that without a saw.
Yeah.
And so I stayed on the phone with 911 until I saw sirens coming. It took them a long time to get there. And this also goes back to our original point of like the idea of carrying a gun to be ready to defend yourself. It all comes with an overarching mindset of being your own first responder, because we were close to Atlanta. You know, we were in the midst of a hub of a lot of infrastructure for response to crises, but it still took them probably 15 minutes to get there. If I wasn't there checking on all these people, you know, if one of them was in critical condition, not that I have a whole lot of medical experience, but I've got training as a wilderness first responder, which is higher up than wilderness first aid. You know, it's like I'm capable to set splints and to stop bleeding, to identify different types of shock. But that's it.
Don't you like carry a tourniquet with you?
I used to, but it busted, which made me realize that it was a training tourniquet.
Oh.
So make sure, this is a little hot tip out there. Make sure you actually have a real tourniquet and not a training tourniquet. So I'm glad I never tried to use it, because the spindle would have broken on me while I was trying to get good, pressure with a tourniquet. But anyway, so fortunately, but I tell this story to say, one, it was really awesome to be involved in a situation where nobody's life was actually at risk.
Yeah.
But they also clearly needed somebody there who wasn't just in this traumatic accident to help them out, help them get sorted.
Yeah.
And so what was really awesome was two full-sized fire trucks arrived and about 8 police cars showed up. Like, it was overkill. And every time somebody new would show up to the every time somebody new would show up to the crime scene or the accident scene, they would come up to me and say, "Are you involved in this accident?" And I'm like, "No, just like I told this, I don't entirely know how dispatch works, but I was like, I told this lady on dispatch that I was not involved in the accident like 4 times."
They probably ask what your name is, and
they asked me what my name was.
They
asked
what you looked like.
Yeah,
so that
and I was
way,
like,
when they get there, they know who to look for to ask the questions to.
I suppose, but like, she asked me all these questions, and then they asked me what my name was, and they asked me like why I was involved. Now it's just like, I guess she just sent them, or maybe they were just trying to verify who I was. But in any respect, I felt like there wasn't good communication between dispatch and the people who arrived.
Yeah.
But anyway, they showed up, and what was awesome was now I'm changing my tire, and I'm surrounded by trucks that are blocking the road, which was awesome because now I didn't have idiots flying by me at 70 miles an hour while I'm changing my tire. And
Never
so once,
felt so safe.
bro, it was awesome. It was awesome. I was able to just once they realized that they didn't need to get any information from me because I wasn't in the wreck.
Mm-hmm.
They just let me go back to changing my tire, and so I was able to change my tire, protected by Atlanta's finest police department and fire department. Got my tire on there, and I was just like, "Hey, can I just drive around this and keep going?" And they were like, "Yep, absolutely, thank you, sir." And so I got in my car, and I start driving, and there is zero traffic between me and all the way down to the airport. It was awesome. It's awesome being on the other side. And I bet there were people trying to maybe get to the airport on the other side of that wreck.
Who did not make
They
it.
were there for a while.
Yeah.
They were stuck in bumper to bumper standstill traffic for a hot minute. But I tell that story to just say, one, it was a crazy experience for me. But two, in a similar regard to your situation, I've always wanted to test myself and be like, do I have the mental fortitude and the moral fortitude to think about other people around me when a crisis happens? Will I be able to be useful in that situation? Or will the situation overload my brain and it force me to make bad decisions or put me in, like, all of a sudden, like, no, that freak me out, and then I make no decision, and I just paralysis by overanalysis.
And I think the moral of both of our stories is you're not really going to know how you're going to react until you actually get into a situation like that. And I think you'd be dumb to assume that you're never going to get into a situation like that, because I think everybody has something like that at some point. But also,
well, real quick, and additionally to that, definitely don't assume you're not going to be in that situation, but also don't assume that just because you watch a lot of cool TV shows,
yes,
that you are going to react positively.
Well, that's what I was saying. Like, if you aren't certain how you're going to react, just keep preparing for those moments to happen. Until they happen. Do what you know how to do after the fact, and then whenever it's all over, go prepare some more.
Yeah, because I've got great notes now. I'm just like, okay, I need to be more aware of, like, just something as simple as what's the color of a vehicle, because I wasn't aware enough. I hyper focused when I was in stress. So it's like, all right, in stressful situations, it's easy to hyper focus. If I'm able to calm myself down and think, okay, don't hyper focus, be aware of what's around me.
I need to be more aware of how many layers of clothes I'm wearing.
Yeah, and think to yourself when you're dressing in the morning, okay, I want to make sure that my gun is underneath my outermost garment.
Yeah.
And everything else is tucked in. So
I think let me wrap this thing up.
Yeah, I want to wrap it up by saying one thing, and this is something I wanted to get into as a topic, but we ended up having lots of stuff to talk about here. But one thing that I want to encourage our listeners with, and something that I've been encouraging myself with, is when difficult situations happen to you or to me, that is the best test of our character, how we react to tough situations. It's always easy to be a really moral or a really good person when life is easy. But as soon as you get challenged by somebody to do better because you did something wrong, or if you're in a really tough spot of no fault of your own or somebody else's, it's just tough. The way that you respond to that situation when it's hard, when you're mad at somebody, when you're frustrated at the world, or when somebody's being emotional, or somebody just does something dirty and double crosses you, how you react to that is a great reference point to where you're at in your maturity. So there's a lot of examples I can go into that I wanted to, but we'll save that for another podcast. But I just want to challenge our listeners with when you're confronted with tough situations where it'd be really easy to lash out in anger or to sit down and do nothing. Those are the moments that test the quality of a man and a woman, but we're men, so we focus on the dudes. So, yeah.
Well, thanks for listening. We'll
make sure you
go like
and subscribe.
Hit that little bell down at the bottom. Turn on notifications.
Yeah. And go watch this junk on YouTube because we want our YouTube views.
Yeah.
But thank you for listening on Spotify. That's probably where you're at. If you're one of those weirdos using Apple Music, we appreciate you too. And if somehow you found this on iHeartRadio or you found this on Amazon Music, bless your soul. You're weird. We love you.
Till next time.
Hey, everybody. If you've been listening to the first episodes, you know exactly where this is going. Donovan and I would like to invite
the Tucker Holloway to be on the podcast.
He's a wide receiver and special teams stud at the Virginia Tech Hokies football team. He is the son of Brody Holloway. He's a good friend of mine. He's a deer hunter fiend, and he is an absolute bloodhound on the trail. And most importantly, dude loves Jesus.
Yes, very much so.
And we'd love to have him on the podcast. He's a busy man. He's getting ready for spring or for winter training with football. So who knows if we'll be able to have him on at any point soon. And who knows if he even listens to this show. But Tucker Holloway, if you're out there, or hey, if you're friends of Tucker Holloway and you listen to this podcast, hit him up. Let me know we want him to have him on the podcast. Anyway, we love you. Stay strong.